Hi, Tammy. Welcome. And I'm seeing Insaf in the guest too. So welcome, Insaf too.
Hello, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you perfectly. How are you?
I'm fine, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Insaf, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, we're gonna be waiting for like 5, 6 minutes so that everybody would attend to the meeting, and then we'll start the webinar.
All right.
Thank you.
Hi, Miss Safar.
Um, Hi, Nathan. Welcome.
Hello, Professor Tammy.
Hello, how are you? It's a
Hello,
pleasure
thank
to meet
you.
you.
Thank you very much. Hope you have a good day there.
Well, it's very early here. It's 7 o'clock in the
7 o'clock
morning.
morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Here we are at 3 p.m.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Um, ready for the next? Yeah. We are
Yeah,
waiting for the next panelist,
I think.
Fatima. Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know whether Insaf can hear us or not. Insaf can hear us or not. Insaf, can you hear us?
Yes. Hello, I'm here. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Hi. I'm fine. How are you?
How are you all? Great.
You're all fine.
Hello, Insaf.
Hi.
Hi.
State Election Petition Tribunal.
Hope you have a good discussion today.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Um, uh, we don't have your voice, Fatima.
Yeah, I think now we can start the session.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 9th SPRI research event. I'm Fatana Safar, your moderator in this event. I'm a master's student of industrial engineering at Sharif University of Technology. I'm currently a researcher in the Industry and Sustainable Development think tank, which is structured within the Sharif Policy Research Institute network. This event is organized by Sharif Policy Research Institute. Sharif Policy Research Institute was founded in 2008 as an affiliated research institute to Sharif University of Technology. The institute began with working professionally in the fields of energy, industry, and sustainable development, leading to Shape Energy Think Tank and Industry and Sustainable Development Think Tank. Meanwhile, 3 specialized centers, namely Sharif Governance and Policy Think Tank, Migration Observatory, and Business Think Tank, also started working under the Research Institute and then became pioneers in their fields. As you have all seen in the poster, this event is going to be about global value chains, and the value chain has long been there. And since then, it's getting more and more important for developing, and less developed countries. We're going to talk about 3 main topics: an introduction to GVCs, the determinants and drivers of GVC participation, and why GVC participation is crucial for developing countries. But before we start, for all the audience, if you have any questions during the session, feel free to write them down in the chat box. I'm going to read all of them, select a few, and ask them at the end of the session. We're honored to have 3 outstanding researchers as panelists today. Temidayo Akinroye, who is an associate professor at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Insaf Gadidi, who is a WTO Chair Junior Fellow, and Najmuddin Yazdi, who is a senior researcher at SPRI. I would like to welcome all of you and thank you for being with us. Okay, I'm gonna start with Professor Temidayo Akinroye. who is a faculty member at the University of Missouri St. Louis in the United States and a senior visiting fellow at Lagos Business School, Nigeria. He is a member of the Peer Review College of the British Academy of Management. His recent research interests focus on using supply chain management to address sustainable development challenges such as healthcare, food security, modern slavery, small businesses, and driving sustainability in global production systems. He has published widely in top-tier academic journals, and his book, African Sustainable Global Value Chains, was recently published by Springer. Tammy, could you please go ahead and tell us what GVCs really are? Could you give us a brief introduction of GVCs and why they emerged in the world of trade?
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to join these global scholars and also the audience to discuss a very important topic. Global value chain is very important. It came up because the world is more connected, interconnected than we expected. Historically, companies can produce all they want. You know, they can have all their resources, materials, they can source it locally and produce goods and services. But as we know, now you need to source your products and commodities and also components from various parts of the world. In addition to sourcing, you know, the process of adding value to these commodities, it's now located in various countries. So let me give an example. A car has thousands of components. Now, these components are not made in one company, they are not made in one country, and they are not assembled in one country. So they originate from various countries. And those various countries that add to the production of a car are part of the global value chain for making a car. Now, why is it important? It's important because it enables countries, particularly developing countries, to create jobs. It enables them to add value to the products that they make. Historically, developing countries have been known for exporting raw materials, commodities, and they have not been getting value for those commodities. Take, for instance, countries like Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria. These countries were known for producing cocoa. And we know that cocoa is the primary raw materials for chocolate. All right. Now, you'll be surprised that presently there are limited, very few companies in those countries that produce chocolate. So what it means is that these countries are part of a global value chain, but they have not upgraded in the global. They are still exporters of raw materials. They need to upgrade. And what does upgrading mean? It means that you add value to the commodity that you supply to the global value chain, so that in adding value, you create more jobs, your entrepreneurs will earn more money, and also your economy will grow. But then I think it will be limited if we focus the discourse on global value chain to commodities or products. Global value chain also include the contribution of know-how, intellectual ability, right? It includes skills. Countries like India are known to be outsourcing IT, information system, technology to other parts of the world. So the concept of global value chain of the world. So the concept of global value chain does not just restrict itself to adding value to products. It involves services and also involves know-how. So I think I will stop there because you asked me for introduction so that I don't take too much time.
Thank you, Tam. That was a great introduction. So we're going to go to our next panelist, who is a senior researcher at SPRI and the executive director of Sustainable Development Think Tank. Najmuddin works on linkage of GVC and industrial policy, which with a focus on public procurement of innovation and localization policies. Najmuddin, I want to ask you, this question, what are the key determinants and drivers of GVC participation?
Thank you, Temi. Thank you, Fatima. As Temi pointed out, GVC, global value chain, needs participation, more participating countries and changing their roles and getting more value out of it. And to do that, we need to know what are the determinants and drivers of participation in global value chains. If you let me, I think I share my slides would help audiences to better follow and follow my talk. Let me share the file. Just a moment. Okay. Do you have my screen?
Yes, I have your screen.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Let's get a brief talk about GVC drivers and determinants of GVC participation. Antras and De Gortari studied 100 countries over the past 3 decades, and they have found 6 determinants of GVC participation. The first one is factor endowment, then it's about geography, also the domestic industrial capacity of the country, trade policy and FDI, also the institutional quality and connectivity, or we can say the infrastructure matters for the participation in GVC. Factor endowment can be divided into 3 parts, natural resources, labor, and capital. All 3 have a role in GVC participation of countries. For example, if countries have, as Temi example, have, for example, a good sources of cocoa or oil or something else, they would be sometimes trapped in some part of the, in a specific GVC, and also maybe in some in a specific part of that GVC. The other determinant is geography. Trade costs due to geography determine which country to import from. And also the trade costs compound along the value chain. We know these. And also this may encourage this compound effect may encourage more remote countries to specialize in upstream stage and more central countries to specialize in downstream stage. However, we should note that that by saying remote countries or central countries, we mean the geographical distance to GVC hubs like China, US, and Germany, according to the reference tree, as you can see here. Also, inefficient transport and logistic amplify trade costs and would make countries exit of some GVCs if they cannot manage their trade costs due to the inefficient infrastructures. Another determinant of GVC participation that developing countries should pay attention is the domestic industrial capacity. Its overall effect is ambiguous, or we can say it acts like a double sword. It can has contradicting effects. At one side, larger domestic industrial capacity may lead to more traditional forms of production. That's a developing country, or a developing country may rely on its large domestic industrial capacity and would continue that capacity. So avoiding from being inserted into GVCs, so reducing use of imported inputs, and therefore there would be a lower backward GVC participation. This line of reasoning and this logical mechanism would be reinforced by industrial policies such as import substitution that is prevalent in many developing and less developed countries to support infant industries that often would last for decades. The other side, the contradicting effect would be that a larger domestic industrial capacity in a country would create demand for more final goods, and so there would be a downstream upgrading in GVCs. Anyway, whether the effect of a large domestic industrial capacity would be positive or negative, it would help developing countries to face disruptions in GVCs. That's a prevalent phenomenon. They can rely on their domestic capacity and face those disruptions. We have also trade policy and foreign direct investment, FDI, as determinants of GVC participation. In this regard, regulatory barriers on imports and exports, such as tariffs or quotas, increase trade costs, so serious consequences for countries' participation and positioning in GVCs. Therefore, reducing such barriers would help countries to participate more and more international production and in GVCs, and lowering the price of final goods. Therefore, tariffs on imports of final goods and intermediate products are negatively associated with GVC participation. The other determinant is preferential trade agreements that countries sign between each other. They may be regional, international, but I'm not going to talk about it much more because I think Insaf would discuss PTAs in more details. I guess so. And the other determinant is about institutional quality. We know that weak contract enforcement is a significant deterrent for GVC trade. Also, the performance of a GVC depends on the strength of its weakest link. It is a simple reason. In a chain, the strength of that chain is equal to the weakest chain. And so in GVCs that there are weak links, countries would avoid that GVC or would not easily enter into that GVC because it would affect the final price of the products and also the reliability and sustainability of that global value chain. Also, there would be production delays by weak contract enforcement. And the final determinant that Qi and Tang have pointed out is about connectivity or infrastructure. Transport costs still remain the main obstacle to entering, establishing, or upgrading in GVCs. It matters a lot. It's about investment, money, and quality of national road infrastructure, particularly matters for timely delivery to global markets. Also, the capacity of harbors and other types of infrastructure. Also, the use of internet and common language may facilitate GVC participation in the modern here in the 21st century that we are living. Thank you very much. I hope it wasn't too long.
Thank you, Najmuddin. That was great. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move to our next panelist, who is Insaf Gadidi. She's a WTO Chair Junior Fellow. She has a PhD in economics. In her research, she has been focusing particularly on global value chains, trade facilitation, and environmental impacts of liberalizing trade, and the effects of exchange rates policy. So she has a lot of expertise on trade policies and etc. Isab, I would like to ask you, because you've done a lot of valuable research on PTAs, I would like to know what is the linkage between PTAs and GVC participation? How do you think PTAs could help countries participate better in global value chains? Your mic is off, I think.
You can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for this very important question. Actually, what is more important about the participation in global value chain, and it's linked to creating more or signing more trade agreements, is the depth of the trade agreements and the provisions. So the focus now is not how many trade agreements we sign, but most importantly, is the provisions that are covered in the trade agreements. In my studies, I've focused on the importance of environmental provision as an example, and how it is important to shape the global value chains toward more sustainable, let's say, or green global value chains, which I think is very important. There are other work in the literature which focus on the provisions in intellectual property and its importance to encourage the participation in global value chains in service sectors, to encourage digital trade, etc. And also there are the ones that are related to investment or trade facilitation provisions, especially, as you know, the WTO now is focusing on the work on the trade facilitation agreement, which basically how to engage developing countries or to enhance the facilitation measures and factors in developing countries to help them engage more in international trade. So so this is in a nutshell the importance of trade agreements. So let's say in a nutshell, it's the provisions, the depth of the agreements, etc. But also, I don't know, I prepared a presentation. I think some, I don't know if it will take a little bit of time, like 15 minutes, but it shows very how developing countries are engaging in global value chains, and especially it's not like the globalization itself, but also the type of the participation in global value chains, like forward, backward, upstream tasks, downstream tasks, the type of participation, the sectors also, because the sectoral dimension is very important. So I don't know if I could have like a chance.
You know, actually, it's our next question that I'm going to ask all of you. My general question was, how do you think developing countries are participating in global value chains currently? Are they more upstream or downstream? And what are the pros and cons of their participation in global value chains? So I think we can have your presentation right now.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I will share it right now. So first I will start, I'll try to be brief by explaining the measures, like the technical measures of global value chain participation. And then I'll go like, can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see that. And if we want, we can enlarge that.
Is it okay now?
Yes, it is perfect. Okay, go on.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. So so here the global value chains. So here, for as an example, making airplanes has become like a team effort this is like one product, airplanes, and it's like a big global puzzle. So each part of this plane is made in a particular country and around the world. So this approach involves the collaboration of different stakeholders. We have like engineering teams, we have manufacturers, buyers, suppliers, etc. So here, why we are more interested in global value chains nowadays? Because as we notice in this figure, the imports of intermediates is much higher compared to the imports of final goods. So here now we are trading more parts and components than trading final goods that are produced directly. So the measures of global value chains is basically in value added terms. So here we have like the total exports and we have the value added exports in global value chains. As you can see here, the world gross exports compared to the value added to the world value added exports, we see the share of the value added exports is big and is very, very important, and it's becoming more important along the years. So here, global value chain phenomenon is expressed in in many other notations, or like, for example, we can say international fragmentation of production, global sourcing, trade in tasks, etc. So here we have a value chain where we have like many tasks and activities that are executed by many firms, and each firm is adding a value to this specific task. So here, technically, what's the meaning of global value? Global value means at least 3 countries in the value chain. So we have, if we focus in this figure on the reporting country, if this reporting country imports value added, do some processing or production processing, and then exports again, and here we are talking about backward participation in global value chains. We have 3 countries, we import to export. And then the second type, which expresses forward participation, which is we export value added, and this value added will be exported again to a third party by the partner. So here we are speaking about forward participation. So 3 countries, sometimes we import to export, sometimes we export, and our partner will export again this value added. How to measure global value chains? First, we have like the customs data. Through the customs data, we make what we call global input-output tables. So in the past, what we have the gross, like a gross trade data, like gross exports or gross imports from those tables, gross input-output tables. We have the gross output, we have the gross exports, etc. But we do like from these input-output tables, we it's like we do some calculations of the matrix, and then we have another sort of tables, which is called the value added tables. We have 2 major examples that I personally work with. We have the UNCTAD EORA Global Value Chain Database, and we have the TIVA Trade in Value Added Database. In this presentation, we show graphs from UNCTAD EORA Global Value Chain Database. So here, the main indicators of global value chains is trade in intermediate goods, foreign direct investment data, value added in exports, and we have of the same like condition, which is 3 countries in the value chain, and I personally work indicators related to forward and backward participation indices that we can get them from the input-output tables. And then we do like some calculations to have the value added input-output tables, and then we have this measures. So how this is calculated? So we have like the forward participation. We calculated from like, we have the formula indirect value added over gross exports time 100. So they are the indices, the global value participation indices are expressed in percentage, like the share of indirect value added or the share of foreign value added in gross exports. And the Global Value Chain Participation Index is the sum of the forward participation index and the backward participation index. So there is another formula that indicates how much countries are engaged in upstream or downstream tasks. So this is what we call the Global Value Chain Position Index. So here, for example, how we do the calculations, we have the basic input-output tables. We have like the intermediate use, final demand, gross output, etc. From this input-output table, we get the matrix X and T and Y. So T is the intermediate use here in the EORA matrix. We do like the objective to manipulate this matrix is to have like coefficients of value added. And from these coefficients, we can get how much this country is contributing to global value chains in terms of forward and backward participation. So here, like we have the gross output is the sum of intermediate use and final use. And then here we do like this this formula, and then we calculate the Lien-Different-Verse. From the Lien-Different-Verse, we get this one, which is the matrix of the value added. So, and here we have, it's like calculated as this. For example, the F11 indicates domestic value added. And here, this formula indicates the foreign value added. And we got at the end this table, which indicates forward and backward participation, which is the, if we read and horizontally, we see that it's DVX, it means domestic value added that is exported to a third country. And here the FVA is the foreign value added, so imports of value added that will be exported again. And the DVA is the domestic value added. So here in the past, we focused in the literature on gross exports or gross imports, but now we focus more on the classification of these gross exports. So here we have like in blue, indicates global value chain participation. So here we have like gross exports are divided into two major components, foreign value added and domestic value added. The foreign value added is the value added that the reporting countries imports to export. The domestic value added is the one that is much more important because it indicates how much this country is contributing to gross domestic product or to production, domestic production. So here it's classified into three major components. We have the direct value added that is consumed directly in partner countries. This is like not under global value chains. So it's like direct value added exportation. And we have the exports that are returned to the domestic market. And then we have the indirect value added, which indicates the forward participation, which is our measure of interest. Sorry. So here, as you can see, this is the world map. So here, the world map indicates that there are the three biggest hubs in the world that are trading in value added. It means exporting value added. We have China, Germany, and the US. So this is in terms of like in current year, $1,000 US. This is the amount, how much these countries are exporting value added in global value chains. However, the second map indicates the share. It means how much countries are trading value added in global value chains compared to their own exports. So here we see that there is like the colors have changed, meaning that we have like in Africa, developing countries, they are more participating in global value chains because a big part of the exportation of these developing countries depend on the value chain, depend on at least two other countries. And here, so what drives global value chain participation? Many things. For example, the cost advantage labor costs. So here, firms decide to relocate to countries which have skilled labor, low costs, good trade facilitation measures, they are not far away from customers. They have political economic stability, or sometimes they're okay because simply they are like lenient. They are pollution havens because they have like lenient environmental laws. Here, what about developing countries? So this is like the stylized facts about developing countries. So here we have the gross exports versus value-added exports in developing countries. We see that in the share of the value-added global value chain added exports is very important in the gross exports. Here, the difference between forward and backward participation in developing countries, as you can see, in green is the forward participation. So here we can say that developing countries are engaged in forward participation in global value chains. They are more upstream. So this is in global, taking into consideration all sectors, and this is the average between all the developing countries in the list. And here we have like the difference between developing and developing countries. So here in blue is the global value chain participation index, which is the measure of both forward and backward. And we compare it to the gray one, which is the one that is related to developed countries. So here developing countries are less engaged in global value chains compared to developed countries. And here, this is the calculation of the position. So the more we are close to 1, the more the country is upstream. The more we are close to -1, the more the country is downstream. So here we see that developing countries, the measure it is in blue. So the blue indicates that developing countries are more upstream. So they are engaging in the very beginning of the value chain. They are executing tasks in upstream tasks. So here, the difference between 5 selected countries, in developing countries. So I have selected Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, Nigeria, and Tunisia, and we compare between 1990 and 2018. So as you can see here from this graph, that all those developing countries are engaged in forward participation. So let's focus on the last year, 2018. So here, all of them, they are engaged in forward participation, and the forward participation index is much more higher compared to the backward participation for Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, and Nigeria. So here Nigeria is at the top of the list. It means they are participating very much in forward linkages. So here let's compare the sectors. So here the sectors, we have the domestic value added. So this is in amounts, in dollars. So here the domestic value added that indicates forward linkages, and the foreign value added that indicates backward linkages. As we compare, we see that we have like pretty much the same sectors. We have just for upstream tasks, we have like financial services, and we have the top one is the mining, then we have the financial services, and then we have the petroleum and chemical products. And then for the backward participation, we have petroleum, mining, and electrical and machinery, then textile, etc. So this is like the top. So this graph presents just the top 10 sectors. But we have like in EORA, I guess, 26 sectors. So here, how developing countries could reap the benefits from global value chains. So here we have like this smiley curve. The smiley curve indicates that the more we are in upstream and downstream, like the upstream tasks, the more we are at the beginning of the value chain or at the very last tasks of the value chain, the more we are reaping more benefits from participation in global value chains. So the more developing countries are attracting investments that are related to research and development, or like a conception, product conception, etc., or the more they are, this is like the pre-production, or the more they are doing related to advertising, etc., the more they can reap value added. However, the truth indicates that the participation of developing countries at the bottom, as we saw in the previous figure, which is mainly about mining, etc. Like very basic things related to assembly, things related to assembly tasks, etc. So that's why we are always in the lower at the lower level. So upgrading is very important. So so the implications here of participation in global value chains. So for developing countries, why the positive things that where if developing countries they participate in global value chains and they upgrade their participation, like they do industrial upgradings, environmental upgrading, etc. So they can improve their standards of living. They can get benefits from the transfer of technology, etc. Create more jobs. They increase competitiveness compared to the local market. And there are other things that are negative, which is if those developing countries, the pollution happens, so this is will not really help their environmental upgrading. Also, if they are of developing countries, they are interdependent on other countries in the like the value chain, on the sequence of the value chains. So this will be problematic, especially in times of disruptions like what happens in COVID-19. So we are dependent. We cannot import some specific goods just because the countries or the value chains that we are in, they stopped. Sometimes there are negative things related to geopolitical tensions, like and sorry. So here the participation. So here, like many food, many products, food products, we are not able to import, etc. There are also the issue of inequality, etc. So yeah. So I don't know if I can conclude based on this presentation.
Yes, you can. If it's
I can conclude directly. Yeah. So here, like the new trends in global value chains. So first, we need to think about how to be resilient to any disruptions or harmful effect of specific conflicts or pandemics on the value chains. We need to have like a plan B or C, and then we need to think about how to upgrade environmentally. It means how to create more sustainable global value chains, how to attract more sustainable investments. And also we need to think about how we can collaborate at the regional levels and create more regional value chains instead of just focusing on the global picture. And for example, there are like local global value chains between the Asian countries and also between African countries, etc. There are also the importance of services, and we can reap like a great advantage from the service sector just by like upgrading or facilitating, enhancing the facilitation measures that are related to digitals, like the internet connection, like artificial intelligence, etc. So how we can reap more benefits by this in the services. And also here, the question for developing countries is whether to go digital or to go green, because as you know, like the advances in the digital in the technology is very rapid. And also we know that the country is more focusing on climate change, green issues, etc. So here it's very important to shape our way of thinking toward going digital and green at the same time. Why not? And to set suitable strategies to do so. So thank you very much.
thank you, Insaf. You've said a lot of very important points on GBC. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
okay, somebody, Professor Medici, if I'm not mispronouncing it, has a question. I'm gonna give him mic access. Professor Medici, could you please connect your voice and ask your question? Or do you want me to read your question?
Hello?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Right, okay. It's Professor Medici here, joining in from University of Kigali in Rwanda.
Thanks for
Just
coming.
have one little comment slash question. Yeah, comment slash question for the last speaker.
Okay.
I saw that the data you presented for the stylized facts ended in 2018. And we know that what's happened in the last 2 decades across the world, it's in the last 3 years since COVID hit town from 2020. So the history of the world changed in the last 3 years compared to the last 20 years. What implications would that have on the data you presented that ends 2018?
Insaf, do you like to answer that question? Because that's based on your presentation.
Okay, I'll answer that. So here, I think I've talked a little bit about this at the end, which is like the implications, specifically in the presence of COVID, and also the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. So here, everything has changed, and it's true. We cannot see this directly on data that is based on value added that we calculated, but we can see it a little bit, especially if we take other indicators like the foreign direct investment. Sorry? Yeah. So the foreign direct investment indicators and the trade in intermediates is, so it's like it's not a direct representation of like to understand the forward and backward linkages and how those two types of participation are impacted directly, but still we can see this. And also what we saw is that there is a change in many specific value chains. So here we are not speaking about value chains as a whole, but specific products like the food products, energy products, for example, Ukraine and Russia. When the conflict has happened, this impacted many countries in North Africa and in Europe as well. When the COVID happened, there are like specific value chains that have been impacted. For example, we see an increase in the trade in specific products, like the pharmaceutical products, the one that are directly linked to the medicine products, etc. And we see decrease in other types of products like clothing, etc. So this is the implications, like the direct implications, specific value chains.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Tim, are you still with us?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, could you just give your opinion on that matter? What are developing countries doing in global value chains, and what are the pros and cons of their participation in global value chains?
Yeah, thank you very much. The presentation that was made was fantastic, and it shows us the current state of things. I think what we need to consider is how do we move from here? We already know the benefits of global value chain in terms of job creation, in terms of leapfrogging development. The question for developing countries is how do we maximize the benefit of global value chain? And there are a couple of things that developing countries needs to do, because at the moment, the participation of most developing countries is still upstream. All right, so we are not really adding value to most of our commodities. So the first thing we need to do is we need to develop the right strategies that would help us to maximize participation in global value chain. Because at the moment, a lot of countries are still struggling to align their global value chains ambition with their national development strategies. So you'll see the development goals for countries. You look at the economic strategy. It doesn't speak to their expectation with respect to increasing their participation in global value chain. So there is a need for alignment in this area. And how do you align your global value chain ambition with your national development strategy? I think it's important for me to say here that countries could produce various things, but it cannot participate in all the global value chain of all the products that they produce. So a country in Africa, for instance, in North Africa, you have countries that produce agricultural products, including crops, including skin of hide and skin, including, various products. But then they need to assess which of these value chain are priorities for them to focus on. So the challenge at the moment is a lot of developing countries are still trying to be ambitious with their participation in global value chain, and they are looking at the various goods and services that they produce, and that would not help them to maximize their position in upgrading the global value chain. UNIDO have provided very fantastic tools that we use in training some of our participants in global value chain development, which is very unique. And this helps countries, leaders in countries, policymakers, to zoom into the various products that they have and assess the impact of this product should they develop, their participation in global value chain. It looks into the area of economic benefit, sustainability, job creation, technology advancement. So you'll be able to analyze at least the first 10 priority areas of your products and services, and then you come out with at least 3 or 4 key focus that you want to develop your national strategy to respond to. We also need collaboration. And this collaboration involves not just governments and NGOs. At the moment, a lot of debate on global value chain participation in developing countries is being driven by NGOs, development partners, WTO and World Bank. But then we need, participation of private sector is very important. If you're looking at sustainable global value chain, sustainability is a system. So if you're asking a farmer to produce goods that are sustainable using manure, using less chemical fertilizers, spray less with chemicals, the farmer might struggle, all right? Because some of those inputs that are sustainable, some of them are expensive compared to the conventional inputs. So the government needs to inputs. So the government needs to provide incentives so that farmers will be able to gain access to more sustainable inputs. And then the exporter and the manufacturer needs to also participate in this so that when farmers produce this more sustainable product, they are going to buy from the farmers. So when you look at this, you discover that it involves collaboration of key stakeholders where there is an alignment of interest, and then you can develop an inclusive, sustainable global value chain. So for developing countries to leapfrog from upstream to downstream to ensure that they add value to their commodities, they also need research and development and education. Now, why is this important? One of the key drivers of better participation in global value chain is your skills in high technology and your ability to participate more advanced tasks in the global value chain. So just beyond growing crops, you should be able to process, you should be able to involve yourself in packaging, you should be able to involve yourself in research and development that would enhance the logistics and also the delivery of your products to the end users or to your customer. So we need education in specific areas beyond theory, beyond what we focus on at the moment, the strategic alignment of our educational curriculum to speak to our priorities when it comes to global value chain development is very, very important. And again, these also highlight the need for collaborative engagement. This tells us that the Ministry of Education should be talking to the Ministry of Trade and Development and the Ministry of Economic Development and also Ministry of Agriculture, so that we come out with new, alignment of new type of skills that we need to embed in our educational systems. Last but not the least, which I need to mention, is we need to be strategic in our negotiation, particularly when it comes to trade agreements. Why is this important? Developing countries are quick, to sign agreements with, their peers across the world when it comes to trade. But they need to be strategic in such a way that in such agreements, we need terms and conditions that would facilitate the upgrading of developing countries on the value chain trajectory. So we need to move from upstream to downstream. And to facilitate that, we need to look at the nitty-gritty of the trade agreements. Let me give a very practical example. A country like Ghana wants to sign trade agreement, maybe with Europe or America, with respect to exportation of cocoa or processed cocoa. I see no reason why the government cannot, influence some of the manufacturers of chocolate to ensure that some of those products are produced in Ghana, right? So that what is exported is high value product that will not just add value to the product, but then it would enhance job creation. It will increase the economic development of the country. It will make the country to also upgrade downstream in the global value chain. I think I will stop there because of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Temi. That was great. And now I'm gonna ask Najmuddin a little bit of a more different question. Najmuddin, you live in Iran, and Iran's case is a little bit different. It's under unprecedented sanctions. And the question for these countries can be, GVC participation a real solution for these countries which are marginalized? Countries like Iran, to some extent, Cuba, or some other countries. Could you give your opinion on that?
Thank you very much, Fatima. Very nice discussion and lectures from Insaf and Temi. I should say thank you again. For your question, as Temi pointed out, we can have 3 questions for developing countries as regards global value chains. The first one is what drives their participation. The second one is what are the benefits of their participation. But the most important question is how they can and should participate in JVC. And the answer to the third question probably depends on the geographical position, the economic status of that developing country, and so on. For a country like Iran, which is under heavy economic and technological and political sanctions for decades, before paying attention, before answering the how question, we may redefine the goal of GVC participation. Okay, in the classic sense of GVC participation, we think of getting a part of a chain, a global value chain that is defined by big economies, mostly by big economies, by central economies. They have shaped a global, mainly they and their MNEs have shaped a global value chain. Now developing country is bargaining or attempting to take a bit of it for itself. Okay, But for a developing country, at least under sanctions, it should learn from the modern industrial policy. It may redefine the goals. The first, as paying attention to the diversification of its economy. It's very important. And by that, it may gradually gain an economic complexity. They may be interpreted as the other side of moving from the upstream to the downstream of value chains. They may be interpreted as the same move, but diversification of economy could be the first goal. Why we say diversification matters, besides the new suggestions of the industrial policy literature, we can say that diversification helps countries to combat the sanctions imposed on them. They would be less traceable. They would be more resistant. Besides the diversification goal, they should also pay attention to their trade balance. They should have a more positive trade balance with the countries that they have imports and exports. And the third goal could be about upgrading their knowledge base industry. We say in Iran now we have an ecosystem of knowledge-based economies supported by the government for more than a decade. Now we have a roster of more than 8,000 knowledge-based economy with some strict definitions. They have specific supports from the government, and they used to shape an ecosystem with each other. Okay, this knowledge base matters because in the SMILE curve that INSAF presented today, moving towards the left part, that is the knowledge part, the R&D part of value chains, requires a knowledge base in that country. And this cannot be developed by big public or governmental companies, or mainly by the government, but it should be developed gradually by the private sector, okay, the private business sector. The other side of the SMILE curve that INSAF presented to us was about branding, marketing, and so on. Countries under sanctions, as far as I know, cannot do much to that part of the SMILE curve. They should avoid it, okay? Because branding, marketing, sales, and so on would be should avoid that. They used to brand and sell their products under other names. Okay. Under these strategies, global value chain participation would be heavily linked to the localization policy, the new industrial policy of that country. It would gradually turn the country into a knowledge-based economy. And we know, as the Iran's experience, that all the forces are against such policies and supports, because the global forces all push the country to take short-term leaps, easily get employment from the global value chains, more easily get money from the global value chain and global trades. But it's like a trap that developing countries would get into it and cannot get out of it, like the income trap that we have in the economy and in the catch-up economy, technological and economic catch-up literature, that countries sometimes get into a trap, an economic or technological trap, and cannot get out of it. Okay, we totally admit that these suggestions as diversification, complexity of economy, having a knowledge-based economy by the real private sector, alongside the global value chain participation, is against the natural forces that are exerted on developing countries. But we think it is feasible, and they are not contradicting something. Some politicians or maybe policymakers think that global value participations means being inserted in globalization. It is if you are sanctioned, you cannot do anything to the GVC participation, and it is somehow against domestic industrial capacity and policy and support of the domestic industry. But we think that it's not the case. It can be the reverse.
Thank you. That was great. Somebody has raised his hand, and I'm gonna give him mic access. Or yeah.
From University of Tehran, this is Amir, if you can hear me. I wonder that what is the role of new technologies, including AI-powered tools, like, for example, ChatGPT and those things that is becoming a hot topic all around the world. I mean, what is their role on GVC participation? And like, generally, can they affect GVC participation at all? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amir, for your question. I'm gonna ask Insaf. Insaf, what do you think about this question?
I know that it's a very hot topic, like ChatGPT, etc., and artificial intelligence these days specifically. Like it's a boom in all the artificial intelligence websites. So actually, I can answer this like a very clear answer because it's controversial. I mean, everybody's discussing the role of artificial intelligence in replacing people, in replacing tasks. And like reducing the costs, some trade costs, especially, etc. I think that it's very important to go with it, not to just ignore the importance of artificial intelligence, but to replace it. I mean, it's very important, the human interventions, interventions, very important, but still including artificial intelligence and all other high technology products in global value chains. So it's very important. This is what I see. We need to make more research about this and about the potential impact, because if we include more tasks or base it on artificial intelligence, then probably we will reduce more job offers. For example, like ChatGPT, probably other similar technologies could for example, make the services more quick. I mean, there will be growth in the service sectors, but this will create probably more job issues. So yeah.
So you think the effect on GVC participation, or the whole system of GVC, is just in foreseeable future, and now we don't have any effects of these technologies on global value chains, right?
Yeah, we don't have. I can't hear you, Insaf. Is your mic?
Which means I can't hear you. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get the question because I got
so at the moment, these new technologies like AI-powered tools don't have any effect on global value chains, but in foreseeable future, we can say that they would have an effect on global value chains, right?
Actually, we can see like those technologies as a double-edged weapon. It's the same like participation in global value chains. It's a double-edged weapon. Global value chains. It's a double-edged weapon. So it's the same for this technology, and also this technology we can see it as like a mean to participate in global value chains, and as a product that could be made under global value chains. So these like these two aspects. So if we see it as a mean, so there is like the positive aspects and the bad aspects of like including or using more artificial intelligence technologies in global value chains. Like we can use it in estimations, because this is could for example how this has a positive impact. For example, at the customs, we can do more automated procedures, so no need to human intervention, and will decrease the number, for example, of documents or days to export or import. So this is directly will increase trade, or facilitate trade. But if we see it from like economic quality or inequality issues, so this is problematic, because if will be like a huge gap between the countries that can adapt these technologies and the countries that cannot adapt these technologies into their value chains.
Okay, thank you. Tammy, do you have any idea on this question? How do you see global value chains?
It's a very important question, and I see it from two perspectives. So the first is developing new technologies that leverages on artificial intelligence, robotics. The other part is maximizing the benefits, of the existing systems, existing tools that we have. Existing tools that we have. The implication of this is in the second part, which is currently we have ChatGPT, we have a lot of artificial intelligence tools that, in my opinion, I think they could help, particularly in the area of research and development. So if you recall, I said countries, particularly developing countries, and this is what I've observed, that they are very, very ambitious when it comes to developing their participation in global value chain. They want to develop everything. They want all their resources to be on, in the downstream of the global value chain. But you need to prioritize, all right? So, and in developing your priorities, you need to understand who are your competitors, in which countries across the globe, these goods that you are providing that you think is the best for you, which countries across the globe have economic advantage or in developing such goods. So ChatGPT could help you to go into databases and do a kind of a review of existing reports, existing studies, policy that has been published, to synthesize intelligence that would help you to understand where you currently are and how you can advance your position in the global value chain. So these could help in research and development. The is in the area of sustainability. So countries are taking modern slavery, right, very seriously today. And modern slavery cannot be dissociated with the dynamics of global value chain. All right. So what you could also do with these artificial intelligence tools is you could search for countries to identify current events, risk, vulnerabilities that could affect your value chain. That is one. Secondly, you could search on the database to know which countries have the propensity to increase your exposure, right, to higher incidence of modern slavery. So that means that you already have an understanding that if I source or buy from this country, my exposure to modern slavery activities or child labor would be higher compared to the other countries. And these will help you to develop mitigation strategy as to how you can protect yourself against, the risk of such exposure. But the implication of artificial intelligence, robotics, Internet of Things, all these new bursts is still emerging. It's starting, and I think we need to explore it more. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. I see that we have at least one another question, but I have also a question from Tanya and Insaf. I wanted to ask to manage the time, if you can put it in your questions list. My question is, what are their opinion on the role of regional PTAs, preferential trade agreements, on GVC participation of developing countries, if they have if they know any successful experience in this regard, seeing regional PDAs as a good tool to participate in GVCs, and if particularly for countries under sanctions or limited global connections, marginalized ones. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna first ask Insaf on that question. What do you think? What is your opinion on that? Do you have any idea?
Okay, thank you. So first, I wanna first of all give like a small note about like the whole thing about global value chains. Actually, in my personal opinion, the question is not engaging in global value chains, is trading when trade is good for the country and for the domestic production, because sometimes there is like when we participate in backward linkages more, it means we are harming the domestic production of the country, because when we import to export, it means we are not doing any value added, we are just making small value added in this. So this is one. So this is, to be clear, is that the countries, they are not like focus more on participating global value chains, but instead focus more on products or tasks that can benefit the country. So this is one. So here, coming to the question about PTAs, again, it's not more about signing more PTAs, because sometimes with complex PTAs we can like have this threshold effect. We sign more PTAs, then the thing is becoming uncontrollable. Then we have many PTAs, like the spaghetti ball, like spaghetti, everything is interconnected. We have more, and we don't understand the positive or the negative effect of a particular PTA. So this one. So two, the more we focus on the content of the trade agreements, and the more we try to implement, like to enforce the provisions in those PTAs, the more it's better to sign more with different partners. So here, the most important PTAs, for example, to make the upgrading, like we go back to the question of ChatGPT and all high technology products, etc., is very important to have provisions, enforceable provisions of intellectual property rights, because investments, where they are coming in a market where they can be sure that their technologies are protected, even if it is like so this is a very important question, because sometimes we have in specific developing countries, we have the knowledge, we have people that they are able to execute tasks in the financial services, in engineering sectors, etc., but still are those multinationals ready to relocate specific tasks that are in the research and development in countries where where intellectual property rights provisions are lenient. So this is a problematic issue. So also we have like we need to understand the position of the developing country and its strategy. So what's the main objective? So so like three objectives. This developing country needs to be, for example, sustainable, with intervening with high quality product, technology products, or it should be like more in the manufacturing sectors. What this country can do the best in terms of producing products. So like Professor Timadayo say that it's not the question of being good in everything, it's by being the best in just one thing. And also to diversify, because diversification will protect the country from first, the country will be more resilient to shocks, to internal shocks, whether in the financial sector, like in the in the currency, you know, ups and downs of the currencies, in ups and downs of the pandemics, ups and downs of the conflicts, natural disasters, etc. So this is all of this need to put into consideration. And again, for PTAs, there is like a need to think about more regional PTAs. So PTAs that encourages regional integration, because if we encourage regional integration and regional value chains, there is the probability of being more resilient, because we have the geographical proximity. So instead, like in a shock, an external shock, instead like of trading with a partner that is far away, it's better to trade in a partner that is in the same region. So yeah.
Thank you, Insaf. And what's your idea, Temi?
Yeah, so I didn't get your question properly, but I get you're talking about PTAs, right?
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah. Regional PTAs.
Yes. So has done justice to this brilliantly, very brilliantly. But we can also look at PTAs in two dimensions. So you could have bilateral PTAs and you could have multilateral PTAs. And the bilateral PTAs is what two countries really have with one other to ease trade. And the advantage of that is you discover that there are areas of mutual benefits. So, you know, country A has something that is beneficial to country B and vice versa. So they can reduce the barriers in trade to ensure that there is unrestricted flow of goods and services. But the PTAs, unrestricted flow of goods and services. But the PTAs that are multilateral, which is becoming a buzzword in current global trade, is what people think it will drive regional integration. So, for instance, the latest one is the African Free Trade Agreement, you know, that some African countries have signed up to, majority of African countries have signed up to. Now, this is important, right? But then it's a means to the end. It's not the end by itself. And why am I saying this? The goods that a country is providing could be fantastic goods, but then there could be also competing alternative within that region. So this is why it is important that you don't just look at yourself without looking at yourself from the shoes of another person. All right. So you need to take yourself out of your country and go into those countries that are competing with you within the region, and then assess your relative strength and weakness. And that would help you to develop your strategy. But then there could also be complexity in trade. So if a country has engaged in multiple multilateral agreements, all right, that could affect the extent to which they can maximize the benefit of those different trade agreements. All right. So, for instance, the GATT, which is the most common, right? Most countries are part of GATT, but then now you have European countries having their own agreement, African countries having their own agreement. What would be the priority of an African country when it comes to deciding who I trade with? Is it GATT? Deciding who I trade with? Is it GATT? Is it African Free Trade Agreement that they've signed? And this priority will be determined by two things. One is the value, the net value added of that transaction. And on the rule of the thumb, it's more economically in terms of value of dollar. It's more economically beneficial for an African country to export or trade with European country because it will be paid in dollars or euro than trading with your core African countries if the transaction is not driven by dollar. So these are some of the complexities that countries need to analyze and understand before they start signing PTAs. But PTAs has a lot of benefits. You know, it allows free movements of goods and services. What a lot of people don't understand is that PTAs does not really bring new interactions in terms of trade. PTAs facilitate and enhances existing trade arrangement. So when the African Free Trade Agreement was launched, a lot of debates came up on, if we don't have good roads, if we don't have good rail system, we cannot make this work. My question is, Africans are trading. They have been trading with one another, right, before this agreement, okay? So what the agreement does is it makes the trade easy. So it's not an end by itself, it's just a means to an end. I'm sorry, I mean, I'm just discussing this from, I don't know if I get the nitty-gritty of your question because I was a bit distracted.
Very, very brilliant answers from you and Insaf. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've got just 5 minutes left, and I'm gonna ask just one more question. And I'm seeing Nayer Madadi, whose hand is up. So I'm gonna give you mic access. Nayer, could you ask your question? Can you connect your microphone?
Sorry, because we are getting out of time, I think Adil Soleimani has had a question.
We can ask their questions. Adil Soleimani has asked a question, which is, what is the role of translocal resilience in repairing the missing links of the value chains? Insaf, have you got any idea on that?
Could you please just repeat the question?
It's in the chat box. It is, what is the role of translocal resilience in repairing the missing links of the value chains?
I couldn't get the meaning of what's the meaning of translocal? What the person wants to say about translocal? Is local resilience?
It's probably some sort of regional resilience. I'm not sure. If Adel is in the audience, could you raise your hand and ask your question?
On the resilience, I know if local resilience has another meaning.
Okay, answer that.
The role of resilience in repairing the mission links of the value chains. So the country to be resilient, first of all, it needs to be like clear value chains. So we know that the product is in this specific country, etc. And we also, when there is like a blockage in a specific chain, So we can go to another country. For example, after the COVID, many countries that are executing specific value chains started rethinking, because they have like many tasks that are in developing countries, and the headquarters are in the developed, for example. So they started rethinking if in a future blockage, what, or a future shock, what they are going to do. So it's like they started thinking of not making the whole task. For example, I don't know, like airplanes, they do, for example, the wheels in one country. So they started thinking doing the wheels in 2-3 countries. So if there is like a blockage in one country, they just can go to another one doing the same specific task. So this is one. So to think about resilience. Also, encouraging regional value chains could be a sort of like we can be resilient by creating more regional value chains, because as I said, the more you are far, the more the trade costs are higher, specifically direct trade costs, like costs to export and to import, for example, or because the number of days will be longer. The probably if you are, for example, trading from two categories, two classifications of country, there will be need more procedures, more administrative procedures, because the way we are trading is different, etc. So I think, yeah, I think this is it. I don't know if I answered the question.
Right, that was really good. Tammy, do you have
Okay. Yes. Again, I think, you know, some terminologies are a bit new to some of us, but I think I understand where the question, the person that posed that question, I know where he's coming from. So resilience in the global value chain requires an understanding of, first, what is the architecture of the value chain. So you need to understand, to map your value chain from end to end. So what people call risk in most situations are events. All right. So once you map your value chain, you know which country you are sourcing various components of your product from, or which value chain you are linked to. All right. Now, once you know those countries and where the suppliers are existing, then you identify the events. What events are happening in those countries that could pose a risk to your production or your position in the value chain. So the first thing is you map the value chain to know various countries, and then you identify events in those countries that could pose risk to you, and you superimpose that event on the country to identify your exposure to develop mitigation. And this requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of collaborative and Cambridge is working on a global cloud architecture that would enable, you know, companies across the world to identify potential events that could pose threat to their value chain. But then this global architecture would require that you input data. So if there is an event in India, in a location in India, you know, you input data on that event. If one is happening in Iran, in Nigeria, right? So manufacturers at every point in time can log in and identify potential events that could pose threat to them, to develop risk mitigation to that. So I think that's what I want to say. Resilience is, it's not just waiting again for these events to occur. It's also learning from the experiences of other participants in the value chain. So if you have companies that are currently experiencing shortage of commodities, you don't wait for it to get to you. You pick lessons from that to build your mitigations and preparedness. Look at COVID-19. COVID-19 did not start across the world at the same time. It started in certain part of the world. Some companies were, shouting and they're struggling that they cannot produce, they're losing customers. Whereas in other countries of the world, they have not really tasted, they have their own share of COVID. So the lessons for those countries that have they were exposed to COVID area could be a very key tool for countries in other developed countries like UK, US that caught COVID at later part of the process to learn and develop resilience. So again, translocal resilience. I don't know what it means, but interestingly, I will take a look at that. But I don't know if my response helped the person that asked the question.
Thank you so much, Temi. We've been with each other for like an hour and a half, and I think I can finish the session here. Temi, Insaf, and Najmuddin, thank you so much for being with us. It was a great honor to be among you and talk to you and learn a lot from you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. The honor is mine. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. My pleasure. It's nice meeting you all. It's nice meeting you all. Thank you. Thank you, Insaf. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. It was my
Have a
honor.
nice day.
Thank you very much. Hope a nice day for you.
Bye.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.